Hey everyone, welcome back. This week, I am Dr. Shayna Keller, naturopathic doctor, Dr. Shayna Powell, a naturopathic doctor and owner of West Elks Wellness here in Montrose, Colorado, where I'm a registered naturopathic doctor. My guest this week is a dear friend of mine, Shawna E, who's also a naturopathic physician licensed in the state of Arizona. And I'll let her introduce herself here in a moment, but we are going to talk about vitalistic naturopathic approaches to mental health. There's a lot of people out there that are struggling with pretty significant mental health issues. And I was one of those people once upon a time with this
Me
is a
too.
diagnosis own for the rest of your life. And it's simply not true for every single case. So I want to give a little bit of hope. And Dr. Shawna specializes in mental emotional modalities of naturopathic care. Dr. Shawna, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. In the office, I go by Dr. E. It's more simple than Ishans. And I graduated back in 2012 in Arizona from, at the time, SCNM, now Sonoran University, and opened my own practice a few years ago in the Scottsdale Air Park. And like you
Cool.
said, it was not necessarily something I set out to do, but it just kind of came to me. And I got the most joy from helping people with mental emotional concerns, often that they didn't come to
Mhm.
me specifically for, but they were
Right.
stuffed and suppressed. And then when we helped balance on those levels, the physical and the mental emotional balanced. And as you and I have talked about, like, I think we get so much joy from helping others with that because we've had our
Mhm.
own struggle bus. We've had
Yeah.
our own journey, and it's so much better on this side. And so I think I can speak for
Mhm.
you and myself that we just want to offer hope that there are options and solutions, and life can be better and
Yeah,
easier.
outside of just the pills, and I'm not saying pills are not necessary sometimes because I'm sure they have a place in, extreme situations, right? We got to get people out of crisis mode. But one of the things about vitalism that was most attractive to me is trusting that the body has innate wisdom and a capacity to heal. Like you
Yes.
cut your finger, right? Like we've all done it. You cut your finger and it bleeds and then it clots and then it scabs over. And then by the end of a week, it's totally healed and gone, depending on the severity of the cut, right? Like you didn't have to tell it to do any of those things. It just does it. And it doesn't matter if it's a physical wound or mental emotional wound or spiritual wound, healing happens in the same capacity if we understand how to listen to the messages the body is providing us with, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Agree.
So, what kind of situations have you found yourself in with patients that maybe didn't come to you specifically for their mental emotional challenges? I know many patients don't come to me for those either. It's their physical issues. I'm having hot flashes and menopause, blah blah blah, and it turns out they actually have something pretty deep that happened to them previously, and that like really has set them up for maybe not the best form of best experience during menopause. Give me an example of like something that happened that you were like, oh, actually, this is a mental emotional issue that's causing all these physical problems for you. Maybe not
Right.
all, but
So
some.
I love how everything we're doing today is spontaneous. And so I may go back and share a story that actually happened when I was a skeptic. To answer
Mm.
your original question, I don't know if I can sometimes describe what goes on in this brain because there's intuition that we can't describe, there's experience. And so I don't know if I can answer that exact question because sometimes it
Mhm.
just comes to me. But I do want to share this story, if you're okay with that, how I
Absolutely.
started as a skeptic with a lot of the things that I do, including homeopathy, food intolerance
Mhm.
method, NET, QNRT, and you name it. So I teased that I was the worst patient, but there was something that helped me realize, like, okay, I'm shifting. And the person I was referring to moved for Neuro Emotional Technique. And so I thought, okay, it's time for me to take this training. But still, there was just something in the back of my mind that didn't quite add up. So here I am. I paid the money. I had
Mhm.
seen the results in class, and they have us as participants and students come on up and be the demo patients as well. So they
Right.
asked, is anybody in the audience struggling with a chronic physical concern that they have tried everything for? And this gal in front of me raises her hand. She looked vibrantly healthy, young, I would say late 20s, early 30s. And she said, yes, this shoulder pain. I have done everything, and went up. They did a physical exam. A chiropractor led a physical exam, found limited range of motion, pain, crepitus even, which are those calcium deposits. And I'm sitting in the audience going, Okay, sure, maybe they can help with the pain, but there's no way crepitus does not go away fast.
Right.
Like, can it go away? Sure, the body can do anything, but that doesn't resolve quickly. So I don't even know why they're spending time on that. And I'm just being a pistol in my own head in the audience. And over the course of minutes, this gal released it. They found out, yes, there's an emotional connection pretty quickly. And this gal released layers of stored stress or emotion and got off the table with full range of motion, no pain, and no crepitus. And I'm
Wow.
sitting there the rest of the weekend and all of our other weekend trainings that we flew all over for. I watched her. I watched how she put on her backpack. I watched how she walked. I watched how she moved her arm, because in my head, I was still like, this is too easy. This is too powerful. Like, in my head, this doesn't add up.
Right.
And sure enough, months later, we go through certification. We go many weekends. I saw her and I went up to her and I said, how's your shoulder? And she looked at me like I had three heads. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, back in Portland at that training, you mentioned you had shoulder pain. She goes, oh, it hasn't been there since. And my jaw dropped. And keep in mind, I was many weekends into the training. My jaw dropped and was like,
Yeah.
and I asked her, can I share this story? Because I was a total skeptic. And so that has transformed my skepticism into realizing that even things that I thought could not possibly be resolved, they
Mm-hmm.
were so physical, had a mental emotional component at times. So
Right.
that really shifted things for me.
Right. And I feel so similar in some of these odder, like not well explained by the data, if you will, modalities. I don't feel like there's like solid evidence, and I love that we'll talk about that MRI here in a little bit, but I like that there's actually something, because my science brain is like, I need there to be data to support
Yes.
these things. I want that. But I've seen some pretty wild things with homeopathy myself, and though not the strongest modality that I use, when I get it right, it's pretty profound. And I've seen some pretty cool things when I was doing New England School of Homeopathy when I was a student, and just some of the cases. And I sat there through the entire year and a half course of just being like, I don't know, maybe homeopathy works. I don't know, maybe it works. I'm seeing things happen, but it doesn't always work. That's my struggle, is like, you have to be very good, very good at what you're doing. So for people listening, crepitus is like when you go and like roll your shoulder or you pop your knee, like that popping sound that happens. And I want to back up. What is neuro emotional technique, or NET for short?
Mm-hmm. So it is a stress reducing technique on a simplistic level. Is there
Okay.
lots of research around it? Yes, absolutely. I usually don't get into the research too much besides one picture that we can pop up in a bit. But neuroemotional technique resolves past stored trauma or unprocessed emotion. So
Mm,
sometimes, for example, if we lose a loved one or go through a divorce or fail a class or something, we might cry or vent or process that. So it's not necessarily stuck. But sometimes, it could be anything ranging from somebody made fun of you for wearing an outfit in first grade to, there was a sexual assault at some time. It can be small t or big T traumas that we either don't um, give credit that this really affected me. This is
mm,
really hard for me. Or, oh, well, that's silly. I should be fine. No, my feelings were hurt because I got made fun of for that outfit, and I don't care how silly it is. So,
right.
whatever is stuffed and not processed, the body holds on to. And then with NET, we come along and the body gives us the information, because the body is the smartest, and it gives
Mhm.
us the information to help find the emotion, the worst thing. So, for example, shame, failure, and then the age and the original event. So you can go back to that safely, gently, easily, and then quickly resolve it. And I say it's
Wow.
almost like water moving along in a river instead of getting
Hmm.
stuck.
Interesting. So is it sort of like, and forgive me for being ignorant, I've had NET done to me, but it's been a little while. Is it sort of like a listening when you do in craniosacral or visceral manipulation, or like muscle testing, or like
Mhm.
how do you get the information from the body?
Right. Muscle testing or applied kinesiology, which I
Hmm.
also had to get over my skepticism in.
Yeah.
And there's also research about, but still I got my own way. But yes, that is how the body gives information for this
Cool.
technique, at least.
Yeah, and I there's a chiropractor in my area who's a really good AK applied kinesiology practitioner, and um, I was really skeptic of this too. But guess what? I don't have chronic rolled ankles anymore after doing AK, and I can't
There you
explain that
go.
after a lifetime of doing it. I had 2 sessions done, and like my ankles are totally fine. I wear barefoot shoes with like 2 to 3 millimeter soles, and people are like, "Aren't you worried about your ankles?" I was like, "My ankles are fine. I have no issues."
Love it.
Even if it does kind of roll in a strange way, like it's solid. And that's what I like about these, how do I say, more these odder modalities, these less physically, like I don't have to have like a hard massage, but these things
Mhm.
that they stay and they hold
Right.
in the body because they were done
Exactly.
in appropriate order at the right time, and the body was willing. Now let me ask you this from a skeptic perspective. Have you ever seen a patient that you did NET with, the neuro emotional technique, and they were so identified with whatever their case was, maybe a frozen shoulder? I know that's often one that people are attached to, or something else, and that kind of like overrid the treatment.
Yes and no. Yes, that absolutely that can happen, but usually it's subconscious. So,
Mm,
and this is all subconscious stuff. So 95% of our operating is subconscious. That's why this is so powerful. This and another technique, quantum neuro reset therapy, QNRT, because we're going after the subconscious. So what I do if
mm,
one, I suspect that that might be an issue where they're like holding on to that, that's their identity, or whatever reason they're not ready, willing, able to let it go. Or if they aren't healing how I would expect, which is pretty quickly. Then I might
okay.
do statements like, I am worthy and deserving of healing. It's possible
Mm,
for my body and I to be without pain. I'm ready to release what no longer serves me. I can still be loved without frozen shoulder. We come up with whatever statements I'm guided to, or, depending on the patient, what I know about them, that there might
right.
be the little glitches that are still holding on.
Interesting. Yeah, it's subconscious. That's a good Bob Proctor's little stick figure drawing. Are you familiar with Bob Proctor at all by chance?
Yes, but I don't know the drawing.
So it's a stick figure, and the head is split into two, and it's the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And then how, like, what we believe, which is in our subconscious, affects our conscious thinking, but that affects our body. And
Mhm.
so I'm like envisioning this, and I've talked about it on previous podcasts, but how if 95% of our thinking is subconscious below our conscious level, this is why these, different types of modalities can be very, very beneficial.
Yes.
And so we're harnessing the fact that we're harnessing things we don't understand because we don't fully understand the subconscious. No, sorry, how did I say this? We don't
No,
fully
you're
understand the subconscious, but we are using these modalities to help us process what we're not consciously understanding, if that made sense.
Yes. And the way I describe it to patients, because often patients or ourselves will get so frustrated, like, gosh, why can't I get over this issue? Why do I get
Right.
so bothered when my boss criticizes me or my husband says this? Like, why? It's subconscious. And so if we're smart, we would have figured it out on our own. And
Mhm.
Lord knows we spend enough time in our head thinking. So we can't process things in the same way that they began. So if we're
Right.
able to come through the side door or the back door and go, okay, body, I know you're holding on to this. I may not even be aware. And then let the body talk and release. And often it's things where people are like, are you serious? That's bugging me. Like one thing that just came up the other day, not me, but this patient doesn't want to have, it was worry about future diabetic legs. And he's like, I love my legs. I don't have any issues with my legs. Like, I don't know what this could be. I said, trust your body. Just think. And he goes, oh my gosh, my dad has diabetic legs. That's what he called them. And I don't want
Wow.
that. And I worry. And I'm
Wow.
like, there we go. Your body wants to release that. It's holding you back. So
Wow.
sometimes it's big stuff that we know holds us back, and others it's like, I had no idea that really affected me. So it's really fun to process because that's not the stuff that would come out in talk therapy
Right,
or
exactly. It's not
journaling.
like, right, you were, like, neglected or something. It's like, "Oh, this one time I spilled milk and I felt super guilty about it because it made the carpet smell bad,"
Yeah,
or something ridiculous,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so quantum neuro-emotional processing?
So QNRT is quantum neuro reset therapy. And that is one that I've just gotten certified in the last few years because I hadn't heard of it. So it's less common. but the end goal is the same: balancing the nervous system, going from the root cause in the body, and decreasing stress.
Interesting.
Just a
So
good way of
you
going
made a
about it.
comment a little bit ago that like if you can kind of get you kind of get the sense, and it's more of an intuitive thing. There's a lot of intuition that goes into practicing medicine in general. It's like sometimes you're just like there's just something else that we're missing here that's not being said. How do you tell when you're working with a patient whether they need NET or QNRT?
You know
Maybe
what
they
I
need both.
love? Shortly after I got certified in QNRT, I was working on one of my peds patients. I think she was 13 at the time. And we did both. I'll often start with QNRT because that's what the body gives as
Mm.
information as top stressor. And then I'll put the cherry on top with NET. And she experienced both. And I said, so what do you think? She goes, I like QNRT when I don't know what's bothering me, but I know I'm stressed. And I like NET when I know. Like if I had a fight with a friend at school or I'm feeling sad or unliked, then I like NET. And I was like, I'm going to use that. I think that is a great analogy of when to use what. But often I will start with QNRT because the body is smarter than, I say to my patient, the body is smarter than both of us combined.
Mhm. Interesting. And kids, I it's one of the things I enjoy about working with kids is they're so much more tuned in to things than we are, and we adults don't give them the credit that they deserve for the intelligence that they carry and move through the world with.
And they have less roadblocks, whether it's
Yeah,
skepticism
preconceived notions,
or,
exactly.
yes, and they're really good at the muscle testing. It's amazing.
Mhm. Yeah, I do much better prescribing homeopathics and getting a good constitution with a kiddo. One of
Oh,
the cases I think about was a young girl that came to see me, and her parents were like embarrassed by this, but I was just like, oh, this is perfect. It gives me some information. She gets in my office, the door closes, she kicks her shoes off, she throws her jacket on the floor, she takes her sweater off, she pulls her socks off and gets on the table, kind of sitting like this with her feet kicking back behind her. And I'm just like, she got
I love it.
comfortable quickly. She's never met me before. And her mom was just like, oh my
Awesome.
God, I'm so sorry. Like, she just really hates having shoes and socks on. And but that that ability to get comfortable and be yourself without being like, well, society says, I have to keep my socks and shoes on when I'm in public. She's
Hmm.
just like, I don't care what society
Good
says.
for
I don't want
her.
them on. They're off.
And it gave you
um,
homeopathic prescribing info.
it did. I don't remember what I prescribed for her, but she was very open and like super chatty. God, wish I could remember. I only saw her that one time, unfortunately, but I just very clearly remember that. And I'm like, oh, why can't everybody just be comfortable being
Yes.
themselves?
May she
And
stay
again,
that way.
this is where that like subconscious beliefs and people tell us, as we get older, whether that's going from like 6 years old to 10 years old, and now you go through puberty and you have to be a certain way. And whether you're getting it from your parents or your teachers or somebody else in society, that those things can cause the emotional subconscious hangups that we
Yeah.
have. Okay. So there's been a lot of research on NET. I would love for the audience to be able to see that MRI that you mentioned, if you're open to kind of chatting a little bit more about that.
Mhm. So, what will be shown is a functional MRI. This study was done on people with cancer. They wrote down the worst part of their journey and then they read it back to them. So, I'm just making this up. This is all online if people really want to read it. But the doctor walked in the white coat and said, I have blank type of cancer.
Mhm.
I froze. I got a lump in my throat. I held my husband's hand and I just started to bawl. And then I just kind of blacked out and don't remember what else was said. So that would be an example of the paragraph that was written and read back to them. Then they
Wow.
measured subjective and objective findings. So it could be anything from on a scale of 0 to 10, how do you feel? How high is your anxiety? Or let's measure your heart rate, your blood pressure, your perspiration. Then they put them in a functional MRI and read back that paragraph. And as you'll see on the left side, the functional MRI shows the parahippocampal. You don't have to know what that is. It's just a part of the brain where this registered as stress. So
Mhm.
that it's kind of orangey reddish. That is stress, trauma, stored emotion that hasn't been processed and is still triggering the body. Then that person, those people in the study did NET, Neuro Emotional Technique, and then they read back the paragraph to them and there wasn't the same trigger. So I always
Mm,
tell patients, this isn't a magic wand. We can't take away that you were diagnosed with cancer. We can't take away that that was and might be traumatic for you. But we can take away that it's still re-triggering and re-traumatizing you on an ongoing basis. So I think that I don't need, and I think you're the same, we don't need double-blind placebo-controlled studies for everything that we do. If it
no.
works, if it doesn't cause harm, if it's addressing the cause, beautiful. But I
Yeah.
think that study is kind of cool for those people who need to see that information scientifically.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that is really cool. And it really reminds me, I've done a lot of EMDR personally, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. One of the things that I don't love about it is it's like it's a bit of a process. It takes a little bit of time and finding a good practitioner that you jive with, where it sounds like NET and QNRT are a lot quicker to
Mhm.
process these things and don't necessarily require you to like, you know, create a safe place and all that. But the way that I've had EMDR described to me, and it sounds pretty similar to this, is you have a pile of memories that are emotionally charged still sitting on your desk regardless of the time frame of how long ago or recent they were. And so then something reminds you of that and it's kind of still sitting there and like triggers you, for lack of a better word. And then when you do these processing techniques, whether it's NET or QNRT or EMDR in my case, that helps to file these things away in the appropriate memory category in your little mental filing cabinet, so that you can't take away the cancer diagnosis, right? But you can change the way that you're subconsciously reacting to it,
Yeah.
so that you can see the car that rear-ended you from a minor fender bender that really messed your head up, and not be worried that that car is going to come and get you somehow. Like that's a sometimes that happens to people, right, with PTSD and car accidents. Is that kind of
Yeah.
similar to how you understand NET to be working?
Yes. And I say it's more of you can remember and respond, but not react. You're more
Mm,
resilient. That's a lot of REs. But yes, you're less reactive. It's just
remember.
you're more accepting of what is. Doesn't mean you like it, doesn't mean you want more of it, but it's not triggering and stressful.
Exactly. Exactly. I like that a lot. So I'd love to for you to share a case, if you're open to it, of someone that came to see you, and maybe I don't know about you, but a lot of patients that come to see me, they're like, I've seen, 17 doctors. You're kind of the last person. Hopefully you can help me. I don't have much faith. Here's my stack of medical records and every single test on God's green earth that I've ever done. And it's like tens of thousands of dollars sometimes in functional testing that they've had. And, they don't look well sitting in my office. And I'm like, okay, well, I wish you would have come to see me a while ago, or one of my colleagues a while ago, but here we go. It's like,
Yeah. It's the majority of our patients, right? It feels that
it
way
is.
sometimes.
It
Hmm.
does.
Do you want, I have a few that might be great to highlight, but would you prefer to start with something like depression, migraines, um, suicidal thoughts, or more like bipolar, people with bipolar or
Mm.
PMDD,
Let's talk about a
pain?
little bit of like depression, suicide, because that's like such a prevalent symptom. We'll say symptom. And the reason I'm saying that hesitantly is the conventional paradigm says depression is a diagnosis. And in Shawna and I's world, symptoms and diagnoses, just because it's a diagnosis does not mean it's not a symptom, the way that the body is manifesting it. Not saying that you don't technically have that diagnosis code, but the diagnosis codes were created for the insurance companies, and you're not a diagnosis code, you're a human being. So, because depression is super relevant to, like, I don't know what the statistics are right off the top of my head, but it's quite a few Americans that are struggling, and like 1 in 4 teenagers are on antidepressants. It's like kind of a crazy thing in my brain.
Yes, agreed. So, let's see where to start. I'm going to call this person Jason. That's not his name, but he's in his 30s, and he came to me because his wife was basically threatening some pretty severe consequences regarding their marriage. And he came to me and said he felt like a caged tiger, like
Mm,
just amped up, restless, anxious, kind of pissed off and irritable. And he has struggled with migraines for what would it be, about 20 years. And he definitely had plenty of head trauma. He had concussions
mm,
in high school sports. He had some, I don't want to get into too much detail to keep it more vague, but there was other head trauma.
Yeah.
And it had gotten to the point where he started to have seizures. He hadn't had any recently, but he had some seizures. He definitely had migraines. And when he had migraines, it would knock him out for a day or two. And nothing would work. And then in that day or two, he would just do this awful spiral staircase, down, down, down. I'm worthless. I might as well kill myself. What's the point of being here? Deep, dark, icky places that he went. And because he was so type A, those 2 days he was out of commission. Well, when we want to achieve and grow and be and learn, that's not an option to fail. Like,
No.
nope, can't be out of commission. So I think that's what was so triggering. He had a history of past abuse of alcohol, overindulgence, and he was very aware and open to that and trying to be very conscious and healthier with that. Took him
Mhm.
about 2 hours to fall asleep. And if he would wake, he'd have a hard time getting back to sleep. So he was mostly sleep deprived most nights.
Mm.
And of course, some depression, anxiety, really, I mean, he was confident, but not in, how do I say that? Like his mentally emotional health, not so much. Like
Yeah.
physical, yes, I will achieve that. I will do it financially, got it, but not otherwise.
Right.
So that's where we started. And so, of course, I prescribed him a remedy. And the first treatment, or first time I saw him, prescribed him a remedy. And I would have to go back in his chart, but either he never had another headache or migraine again, or it was he may have had one or two more, but they were mild. He didn't have any of the mental emotional concerns. They went away quickly. They didn't bring him down. And in the
Cool.
last many months, I've seen him in the last year or so, and he has had zero head pain in the last many, many months. No deep, dark thoughts. He is like in his prime. He
Wow.
is just thriving in marriage, in life. He's happy. He's joy filled. There hasn't been any depression. He's full of gratitude. And he is able to like rest, decompress, relax, fall asleep quickly, stay asleep through the night. And it really was pretty simple. The
Mhm.
trajectory and the progression that we did, it is not attributed to supplements because unfortunately we're still working on some of his things with memory. So he wouldn't always remember to order the supplements. And
Got
so
you.
you cannot attribute this to supplements. And I'm not a big supplement person, as I don't think you are as well, unless it's really
Mhm.
addressing the cause.
Yeah.
And the cause was we needed to clear out some trauma. There was a lot of stored trauma. We also needed to shift the cranium because 80% of our nervous system is above our spine. And so a newer technique that I'm doing is called newer to me, biocraniopathy. And so that is shifting the brain and the cranial dysfunction. And we can see that when we look at people. In fact, sorry, this is a tangent, but just
Mm.
this morning, I made a social media post about how we can pick out criminals. They have shown that we can pick out criminals based on facial asymmetry.
Whoa.
Whoa. And my thought is if our cranium is messed up, we're going to be more impulsive. Our sleep is going to be off. We're going to seek drugs and alcohol or adrenaline risky behaviors. So if you're
Right.
going after the cause, go after the nervous system and the cranium. Don't put them on drugs and just suppress and palliate. So I digress. Biocraniopathy, his diet was already great, but we cut out his food intolerance, which he was consuming.
Mhm.
And NET and QNRT, like so simple, so profound, so fast. And he is a new person and
Wow.
he doesn't need to keep doing these things. It's not like he had 20 treatments. It's not like I need to see him every 2 weeks. Like the goal when we're doing our job right, or any practitioner, is let's get ourselves fired. Like let's
Yeah.
let them go be the best version of themselves and be a walking advertisement for naturopathic medicine. That's what
Mm.
makes our heart sing.
Yep. And so let me ask you this. Did he come to you having tried many medications or several medications and was, medication treatment resistant at all?
No, because of some of his beliefs,
Got you.
um, he wasn't that into conventional medicine, and it also didn't work. like the pain meds, they just
Right.
didn't help him. And he didn't want to be on depression and anxiety meds. And he knew that there was other reasons. So that really wasn't his preference.
Got you. Okay, so he wanted to try something else. It's always interesting because there's definitely two groups of people that come to see me. Those that have they've like I've tried everything, but really everything means a bunch of different medications, maybe some procedures, or the people that are like, yeah, I'm kind of scared, or I don't really want to take those, or I've tried it a couple times and I didn't really see any relief. So I figured I would come and see you and see what you had to offer as a naturopathic doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So you didn't see him for that long. He couldn't remember to take supplements, and you used a remedy. And for those of you that don't know, homeopathy, when we say we prescribe something, we say we prescribed a remedy. And in this case, it sounds like constitutional, which is like the overarching picture of the person sitting in front of us. We try to pick this most similar remedy that comes to mind. And some of us do different ways of repertorizing or like looking through like on keynotes. So some of his like feeling really like trapped. That's a specific thing to a certain remedy. So that's really cool to see a remedy get picked on the first round. I have some work
Mm-hmm.
to do.
Even the wrong remedy can produce, or even the less than ideal remedy can produce results and help guide you towards the right remedy. So keep prescribing. You're probably better at it than you think.
Exactly. Well, and it gives us information. It's like, okay, that didn't work, or maybe it did work. And work is an interesting word to even use in my mind. Had an effect would be better rather than worked. Made some changes. And I mean, this is a pretty significant seizures, right? Like, oh, he has a seizure disorder. Like, that's different. But anybody that knows anything about concussions and head trauma is those can trigger seizures because different parts of the brain have been damaged, right? Same with
Exactly.
migraines. But then I don't know if anybody's been sleep deprived before, but that can definitely have an onset into seizures and headaches and other uncomfortable neuro things that people may go down the road to try like medications. And
Definitely.
anyway, that's cool. That's really exciting. And he doesn't come to see, well, you saw him in the last year, but he doesn't need to come to see you regularly and is a walking message for any of his friends, family, colleagues. And say, well, you're a different person. I'm sure his wife is very pleased.
Yes, yes. And, going back to if we're doing our job right, and I'm sure some people won't like me saying this, but that's okay. Um, I feel like if people have to keep taking or doing things, and let me rephrase this, the older somebody is, the longer they've had a diagnosis, the more medication they're on, the longer it's going to take to heal.
Yeah.
So there's that caveat. And of course, we're not claiming to change chromosomal abnormalities or dysfunction. But besides that, where was I going? Oh, if we are doing our job right and the body is having the root cause addressed, people don't
Hmm.
need to stay on 10 supplements the rest of their life. They don't
No.
need to be 100% with their diet to stay healthy. They don't need to, 100% compliant, avoiding intolerances,
Yeah,
sensitivity,
exactly.
whatever.
Hmm.
And they don't need to see me all the time, or their chiropractor, or their massage therapist, or their acupuncturist. Like, then the cause is not being addressed, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying
Yeah.
like we don't go through life and yes, we need tune-ups and love and rebalancing, but my goal is the longer I can spread people out between appointments and the more resilient and stable they are, the better we're doing our job and we address the root cause. That's great.
Exactly. And I tell my patients, my job is to help you increase your tolerance to life. See a
I love
lot of people that are like super restricted in their diets, even before, and oftentimes I won't do intolerances with these patients uh, because it does seem like there's some disordered eating. I'd be really curious actually if you've had any cases of disordered eating you've worked with that you were able to kind of get them to like snap out of it, for lack of a better word. Um, because it's something that I don't even talk about nutrition on the first visit anymore with patients because I don't know, like 60, maybe 70% of people that come to see me have some flavor of like, I'm
it.
avoiding all of these things and I'm not eating any of this stuff. And why do I still feel like crap? And I'm following it to a T. And I'm like, you came to the naturopathic doctor's office that will eat Oreos on a road trip if that's what I want to have, and I'm craving something sweet because my body can handle that and it's not going to be a big deal. You know what I mean? And I've had patients fire me because I told them that. It's like, don't do it
Are
all the
you
time. I'm an 80/20
serious?
kind of gal, you know?
Whoa.
I didn't used to be able to do that though. The goal is to get to the point where the body is able to do these things and it's not that big of a deal.
Yes. And you don't beat yourself up and cause it to be an issue.
Exactly. Just like it is what it is. I'm on a road trip. Who cares?
Yes. And I like, can we go back to that, what you said, disordered eating, not necessarily eating disorder, but disordered eating.
Yeah.
This is a bold statement, but I would say 90% or more of society, in my opinion, has some sort of disordered eating, because it can be anything ranging from I eat too much, I don't eat enough, food's not my friend because it doesn't make my body feel good.
Mhm.
I'm scared to gain weight. I am scared to lose weight. Like, there's so much involved with food in our society that's
Yeah.
another reason I love the NET, because we can sort out whether it's I'm okay avoiding alcohol, or I'm okay eating an indiscretion once in a while, or I can still be
Right.
loved even if I gain weight. Any of
Right.
those to help flush out those limiting beliefs, because let's face it, especially in Scottsdale, but all over in our society, there is a lot of bias on how we look
Yeah.
and what
Definitely.
is acceptable and attractive and successful. And it's a lot of bullshit, but it's real. And we hear it, we see it, um, we think it on deep, deep levels.
Yeah, I just sat in on Fleetwood's CE on Ozempic, and there was a case that was shared, and it's shitty. It's shitty that that's how people feel. And the issue that I had with food is food was hurting me.
Right.
And when I took out my food intolerance, and I love food, like I'm a foodie, I enjoy, that's how one of my love languages, I guess you could say, is like experiencing the world through the different cuisines and flavors and textures and whatever. And so for me, when I took out my intolerance, which happened to be egg, which is the only thing I never tried removing from my diet,
So,
uh, it changed everything for me, and my entire world opened up. And instead of feeling so restricted and like I couldn't eat anything, the whole world opened back up for me. And
yes.
that's that fine line of like, okay, is this person having some form of disordered eating that's like because of the nature of something going on, or is there some other unconscious belief that's happening? Like, did their parents tell them some like really horrific things? And I have had moms say really unpleasant things about their teenage daughters sitting in my office, and it's like, you realize that you're talking about her as if she is not here. Hmm. Okay.
Exactly.
Not helpful.
Yeah, and keep in mind, it's not just what we are told directly, it's what we see and observe.
Oh yeah.
Magazines, TV, what's sexy, what's popular, all of that goes into
Mhm.
that Rolodex of our subconscious.
Absolutely. So, do you have a case that you'd be willing to kind of share some pieces of that you helped someone kind of overcome some flavor of disordered eating or eating disorder?
Yeah, let's see. I might like kind of blanket over a few instead of going deep on one.
Great,
Um,
that would be awesome.
so, binge eating disorder, not necessarily bulimia, but potentially bulimia. But binge eating disorder, absolutely. Because if you think about the trigger to that, often it's either to numb, escape, get that dopamine rush, feel better, you're bored, whatever. So the things
Right.
that bring the dopamine rush are not kale and carrots, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So they're the starchy, carby, fatty
Right.
goodness things that
Mhm.
don't necessarily add health for most of us. So
No.
anyway, this one in particular that I'm thinking was very prone to binge eating. And, she would do Uber Eats or whatever is out there and like get all the stuff and the
Mhm.
desserts and everything. And then, of course, feel terrible physically and beat herself up emotionally. And she wasn't necessarily purging, but it was definitely binge eating disorder. And so we did the same things. We treaded carefully on diet. I did end up finding out her intolerances, but we treaded carefully, waited a little bit to balance the teeter totter, and
Nice.
found the right homeopathic remedy, decreased some of the stressors with NET and QNRT. And then naturally that teeter totter shifted to where it was like, you know what? I got Uber Eats, but I got a meal. Or I got a meal and a dessert, but I saved half the dessert. And I didn't care and I didn't beat myself up. And it's just not white knuckling it. Like, oh, I have an appointment with Dr. E next week. I better not do this because I got to report something good. No, it's just that was natural. That was easier. That feels good.
Mhm.
So
That
that's the goal
resilience, yeah.
because, Yeah, the other things like I can't even think of them because I don't use them, but the supplements to just, okay, let's do 4 supplements to help you calm and then balance your nervous system with these 3, and you're not addressing the cause, because if we can rebalance internally, then the
Mm.
neurotransmitters naturally balance and we're not craving those foods or behaviors. So what I say is, I think certain addictions get a good and bad rap. Like you've seen the shirts, we'll run for wine and mommy juice. And like wine, I think,
Right.
is glorified, and alcohol, but you would never see somebody wearing a shirt, will run for Xanax or my
Right.
heroin, fix, or nobody wants to draw attention to those things. So
Right.
in
I mean,
my
even being
opinion,
a workaholic is a
yes,
form of that same type of like overindulgence in things in certain manners.
totally. But it's glorified, right? It's
But it's
acceptable
glorified, it's
compared
acceptable.
to
Exactly.
something else. So what I
Mhm.
say is, I honestly don't care, and I don't mean to be flippant, but it doesn't affect your treatment as much whether you are addicted to shopping, sex, alcohol, food, as
Right.
much as let's balance from within. And so that's the beauty. People can balance across the board. And it's not so
Mm.
much, oh no, you can never overeat again, or this is bad. It's more so, why is your body seeking
Right.
that? And then I will say, though, with anorexia nervosa, definitely more challenging in my experience. It's
Interesting.
much more complex, but whether it is overeating, a dysfunctional relationship with food, bulimia, binge eating, those I have all seen success with.
Interesting. That's really curious to me why that might be, and I'm not sure. That's not a population I typically see. Um, Interesting.
Well, and it
Yeah, and
might just be the duration. Some of the patients I'm thinking of from the past, they had had anorexia for like 40 years, 30 to 40
whoa,
years. So just like with any diagnosis, it's going to take a bit longer. It's really part of their identity sometimes.
right,
Whereas the other people that I'm thinking of that I've worked with for some other things, the concerns were there for like 5 to 20 years. So maybe that was
right.
part of it too.
Right, yeah, and those longer exactly. That's an interesting thought to have. I'd be curious if I'm trying to think if I know anybody that kind of really hones in on, because those are true eating disorders, really hones in on those, and if they've seen any like pretty big shifts in those longer term cases. And yeah,
Yeah, maybe
interesting.
someone will chime in.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So if you know someone that specializes in this and you want to drop a comment, let me know because I'm always looking for, these harder complex situations that we're told in conventional medicine, and again, wanting to give hope without, that what's the word I'm looking for? Like false hope. We're not false
Right.
hoping this. Everything is going to be patient dependent, and I'm sure you've heard this too, Shawna. It's every condition is curable, but not every patient is curable. And that's because there's so many factors that depend on that are just dependent. Like that's the individualized approach to medicine that we take as naturopathic doctors.
Mhm. And it
So,
depends, right?
and
Least
it
favorite
depends.
answer,
That is
but
the
it's true.
most common answer I heard in med school was, well, it depends. What is the person's capacity to cook at home? I know one of our colleagues, Marissa, who's and oh, you know Marissa, she goes to the
Yeah.
NMI or the Vital
Yeah.
Gatherings. She is doing a talk, actually, I think for the Arizona conference coming up on food story. And that's a really interesting approach that I've heard Dr. Charlie Cropley speak on, in that it's like we need to understand the relationship a person has with food and the kitchen, because if there was some weird thing that happened, with that makes it inaccessible for someone to go and chop up
Mm.
the kale that we ask them to add in their greens to their their regular meals. um, okay. uh, I would love for us to chat about a case or some cases, some flavors of bipolar, because I've had a patient who had diagnosed bipolar, and I'm fortunate that it was such a simple situation, because I know it can be a little more complex with various levels of trauma. But I was so blown away, as was this patient, and she did not do well on medications at all, and she was just super sensitive blood sugar dysregulation, and she wouldn't
Uh,
eat consistently, and we got her eating enough protein, and we improved quality of sleep with just some fine tuning of some things, and no more manic episodes, and she was just more than pleased. And I haven't seen her in years, but it was just a few visits, and it's just like,
It's so
it's
awesome.
humbling.
Simple,
It is.
but addressing the cause. Well done.
Mhm. Yeah.
Love it. Let's see. There's been a few with mixed results, of course. The one that I'm thinking of most recently was only 19.
Oof.
And yeah, a lot of trauma, a lot, physical and emotional, in her short
Mm.
19 years. And she was diagnosed with bipolar, complex PTSD, and PMDD, which basically is PMS on steroids, to the
Yeah.
point where you imagine the worst PMS and then add suicidal thoughts and deep, dark,
Yeah.
icky things, right? So
Yeah.
she had all of those diagnoses. But when I interviewed her, I do a consult with patients before I say, yes, I can help or refer.
Hmm.
I realized that there was a lot of trauma right off the bat. And
Yeah.
so we started, and she shared, let's see, I want to cover some highlights, but be vague at the same time.
Hmm.
So she would say things like, I'm chill and I'm calm, but you cross me and I will fucking kill you.
Yeah.
Or if
Okay.
she's dating a guy, she's like, "Oh no, I'm the best he can get. But you know what? If I think he's gonna do anything to me, I will intentionally find somebody, or I'm sorry, I will intentionally find what he's insecure about and then go cheat with somebody who has that." So let's say he was insecure about his thinning hair. She would go find somebody with a full head of hair and intentionally like flirt or cheat just to stab him before he could get her. Like
Woof.
very below the belt. Otherwise, she said, I'm chill, I'm calm. And
Whoa.
and if you're listening, you can probably guess the remedy of people prescribing homeopathy. But she said a variable mood, of course, which is pretty typical. But she said, I'm exhausted, sad, mad, and numb. And then when it gets to be near my cycle, she would say, I'm trying to think of her verbiage. She would sit in bed all day, stare at the wall, visualize blood pouring out of it, and just think of how she didn't want to be here anymore, because it's like, well, what's the point? And just very, very dark thoughts. She did have 2 suicide attempts before I met her. Obviously unsuccessful. That goes without saying. And there was some chronic pain. She had
Mm.
this. She described it like somebody was constantly punching or stabbing her in her back. And I learned
Hmm.
later, well, maybe it was that appointment. I don't remember. No, it was that appointment. I learned that when she was a child, she fell off a very tall something and fell and was paralyzed for a few days.
Whoa.
And so, yes, there was physical, but she'd done chiropractic, she'd done massage, she'd done the things, and it didn't make a difference. So my brain perked up, was like, oh my gosh, we can do this. I can help release some of that trauma. And it was so beautiful how one more. So we finished the 2-hour intake, and I say, will you collect your urine in this cup because I want to check your digestive integrity? And she goes, oh, I know it's awful. And I said, why do you say that? Because she didn't bring up too many GI issues. And she said,
Mm.
well, I vomit every day. And I said, what? How did we not talk about that in 2 hours? And in your paperwork, like that wasn't in there. And she said, oh
Mm.
yeah, I vomited every day for like 10 years
Whoa.
and not bulimic. And not like, there
Interesting.
was no rhyme or reason. And it could happen first thing in the morning. It could happen shopping with her friends in the middle of class, just vomited. And
Weird.
then I know. So, and that she just thought it was normal and didn't bring it up. So my brain went to 2 hours earlier when I can hear everything in my office, if I'm out in the middle. And she went to the bathroom before our appointment started. And I used to have a severe phobia before NET cured it, thank goodness. A severe phobia of people vomiting. The sound of it, the look, the even cartoons, like it was bad, bad, bad. And my ears
Right.
perked up and I was like, I hear like coughing and splattering, like, is she throwing up in there? But I didn't think too much of it. She came out and was okay and didn't say anything. But sure
Hmm.
enough, she had vomited even right when she got there. And so
Interesting.
my brain was just going on, okay, what are these causes? And it was really cool. I saw her because of a circumstance that I'll just say she was leaving for a little bit. I saw her 4 times in 2 weeks, which is not typical.
Wow.
Her vomiting stopped. She got her cycle and forgot to tell me because it was so uneventful and normal. Her back
Wow.
pain was gone. She was like, "Oh yeah, I'm chill. I'm content." She was doing a lot of drugs and alcohol, a lot of partying, even though she was
Mhm.
19. Very self-harm, a lot of self-harm behavior. Um, and she's like, "Yeah, you know what? I chose to stay in this weekend and my friends invited me and I felt chill and didn't really care." I was like, "Oh, this is so beautiful." And that was within 2 weeks. And then
Whoa.
we continued on the phone. And that was, once again, no supplements. I hadn't even found out her food intolerance and she wasn't really eating. So I didn't do too much with food at that point. I
Right.
said, just getting what you can. That was with the right homeopathic remedy and NET or QNRT. I wasn't doing biocranial then.
Wow.
Simple, simple, simple. And her
Was
world was changed.
Yeah, an
And
uneventful period for someone that has PMDD, like, that's
yes,
pretty, significant.
yeah,
Hyoscyamus, was that the remedy that you prescribed her?
laxus.
Lachesis, interesting, okay.
Snake, yeah. She would strike.
Yeah, oh, right, vindictive, yeah, okay, that makes
Yes.
sense.
And she
Hmm,
was hot, lots of perspiration and
yeah.
yeah.
Huh. I was thinking a little
Um,
more intense. See, that's that Nesh brain of mine. See, I need more time with them. But that is cool. What the point of that case was to me is like it can be that simple. And in this is something that often happened to me when I was first in practice of like, oh my God, this person is coming to see me. Why are they coming to see me? Like this is way above my pay grade. But it's not because what we do as naturopathic doctors is we lean back, we take things in, we say, okay, these are symptoms. We're trying to understand the person as a whole sitting in front of us. And like, okay, it's pretty obvious in that case for you. You picked up on all the traumas and the hardships in life being unkind to her and how that was playing a role in some of her self-harm behaviors and some of the really vindictive behavior that she participated in. But that was a safety. And so
mhm.
our job is to be non-judgmental and see how we can support her constitution, her body, without saying, oh, you have these labels. Because in my brain, bipolar and CPTSD, she probably just had CPTSD. I have a theory about all these psychiatric diagnoses in
I'm
that
with you.
there's probably one that's actually the true diagnosis. Because if you actually look at the diagnostic criteria for bipolar disorder and CPTSD, they're pretty similar. And so
Mhm.
then which is the actual one that she truly actually has, as opposed to giving her a bunch and then putting her on a bunch of pills, which if she had done the conventional thing, that's what they would have done. And it would have been a bunch of pills because bipolar disorder is notoriously tricky and side effects from medications. As is PMDD, conventional practitioners will use what's the trade name that they gave it dyed the pill pink, retrademarked it, and sell it for PMDD. I forget which antidepressants is SSRI. Anyway,
I'm not sure.
I digress. But that's a really cool case, Shauna. And you only worked with her, yeah, 2 weeks. I see patients
No,
once a month usually.
let me give the honest, thorough caveat. So that was within the first 2 weeks. Then she moved. We
Hmm.
spoke on the phone. I'd have to look back for exacts, but spoke on the phone a few weeks later. She was stable, doing great. A few weeks later, doing well. I think she had some head pain or something that had come up. And then she came back and I saw her and we had to flush and balance some things out that had she'd stopped her remedy. She wasn't following food. She wasn't doing a lot of things.
Right. Half of what we
And
do is accountability.
yeah, so we rebalanced. And then unfortunately, the next appointment, something came up with scheduling on her part. And I don't know how she's doing. So I wish I could say this was 10 years ago and she's happily married and doing well and all of this,
Right.
but it's not a one and done. Like just like brushing our teeth, it's not, oh, we're good to go now. So it does take not only accountability but maintenance and there's
Mhm.
layers. So we got
Layers.
through some really big layers, but there's more.
Yeah. I like to use Shrek quotes a lot. One of my nieces really loved Shrek, and so I that movie Burned, but there's actually some really good stuff in there. And layers, we're like onions, and so you peel a layer, and anybody that's had any kind of complex shenanigans in life knows that like there's different layers. And even if you feel like you've dealt with something, like something can come up in 10 years and you're like, dang, I thought I like took care of that insecurity, and here it is, another version of it for us to take care of in another way. And
Darn
it's
it.
both a joy and a frustration, and it's part of life. It's how we
Right.
spiritually grow. That's generally how I look at some of like the mental emotional things. Is it's an opportunity for us to peel back those layers and see what's underneath for us, the juice, the goodness, when we
Mhm.
have the capacity to see it as not the worst and most horrific thing that happened, right? I'm thinking like
Yes.
Viktor Frankl's book, A
Oh,
Man's
yes.
Purpose,
Oh
or
my goodness.
something like that.
Meaning
Yeah.
for life.
I mean,
So
yeah.
on that note, though, I think it's important to say, just because we're talking about mental health, like I had a patient come in a few weeks ago who's doing great, massive change. She used to cry zero, like up to 4 times a day. And now I asked, how often are you crying? And she said, I don't think it. Oh, she goes, oh yeah, once. And I said, okay. And was there something that had happened, or did it seem causeless? And she's like, oh no, and explained what had happened. And I just want to make everyone and anyone listening realize, like, our goal, if we're focusing on mental health, is not to shut down emotion or never feel sad again or always feel happy. Like, that is not practical, realistic. That's not life. And so our
No.
goal is to help them be more resilient, clear out the junk in the trunk or the issues in the tissues. And so when life does happen, I use the marshmallow suit analogy with homeopathy, but it's like life happens, but it just bounces off of us easier. And it
Yeah.
doesn't consume or destroy us, or we don't turn into a raging lunatic and, lose our
Right.
stuff. So, but
Right.
it's okay if you cry sometimes. It's okay if you're anxious or worried or overwhelmed. Like, emotion is not bad. There's not good and bad emotions.
It's part of being a human being. And I'm glad that you said that, because there is definitely this pervasive thought that we need to be constantly happy all the time. And it's just not true. Life would be really boring if we never had any of these like little, like, oh, I need to little pivot and have a better response to this. And how do I handle this situation that came up? And in my experience, and I'm only in my early 30s, life gets a little more complicated with each year. And it gives us the opportunity to have those moments of growth and move through things with a little more resilience and grace and understanding and compassion and blah, blah, blah. That's
Mhm.
that spiritual
Love
growth.
that.
Um, so we're
Yes.
kind of coming to our end here, and I think we talked about some really good things, and definitely put a little pin in my ear of making sure that that NET next time it comes to Denver or some other
Yes.
place that's nearish me, I get my booty to that class. But we talked about quantum neuro reset therapy. We talked about neuro emotional technique, QNRT and NET, both hands-on physical modalities that use applied kinesiology, AK for short, to help us identify stored or uh, subconscious things that are going on inside the body that we may or may not know, to help us then process and move through. And it's not just limited to emotional, mental things, it also physical ailments, as we discussed in the initial piece. And there is some cool scientific data that shows using functional MRIs, which is those pictures of the brain, and you can actually see changes based on areas highlighting and quieting down with treatment, which is really neat. And we talked about a few different cases, including things with suicide ideation and depression and head injuries and binge eating disorders, and how disordered eating in general is super prevalent, at least in the United States. And I honestly am shocked. I wasn't educated in school that this was going to be so common, but educated enough to be able to see the symptoms present themselves. And then, we wrapped up on a final case, and keeping it real, that like our goal as naturopathic doctors is to help you have more resilience, increase your tolerance to life. We're not trying to wave a magic wand and take all your problems and woes away, but teach you how to live your life in a way that doesn't allow things to ding you so much, or the marshmallow suit, they can bounce off of you a little bit better.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add, Shawna?
Maybe just an analogy, because I think if some people are like you or I, they might get in their head or just get a little too cerebral. And so I just want everyone to think of, if you picked a lemon off of a tree and you cut it with a knife, and the juice went everywhere, and then you cut it again into quarters, and then you took that quarter and you squeezed it in your mouth, and then you held on to that in your mouth. Eventually, likely you're noticing you're starting to salivate. Or if I talked about this long enough, you probably
I'm
would
doing
notice
it already.
exactly. So it's not because you're crazy, Shayna, or you're delusional. It's because your body remembers when it has had a lemon before, there was that physiological response of increased salivation. So whether you
Mm,
call it muscle memory or, we can call it a bunch of different things, it doesn't really matter. But that's just an example of how we can store trauma. It's like,
mm.
ooh, I remember what that felt like. I don't want to feel that way again. I'm going to protect myself, safeguard that that doesn't happen. And so, I'm going to
Yeah.
control everything, try to control or whatever. But that's just one
Yep.
example of what we're talking about today. And then even though I'm ridiculously passionate about these techniques, and I do hope, and I'm going to nudge you to do NET training, I also want to give people hope that there are free resources. I've
Mm.
done a YouTube video, and I'm sure there's millions of others about EFT, emotional freedom technique. There's, I'm sure, plenty of YouTube options for meditation, which is also shifting the subconscious. There's hypnosis, like you mentioned, EMDR. There are psych K, like there are so many other things. And so even though this is what we're talking about, I just want to offer people hope that there's lots of techniques that can shift the subconscious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always love to give things that are accessible for people. So thank you for that. And I'll make sure to include your EFT emotional freedom technique tapping video in the show notes. And, if you guys enjoyed this video or if you found it interesting or controversial, and you want to share it with someone that might have an opinion or something to say, um, like and subscribe. Care. Like the reason that I do this is because I want people to have access to another option in treatment and care that you don't have to feel like you're isolated and by yourself, especially with some of these more significant diagnoses. And my next guest is actually going to be Dr. Danny Dowling, and still not sure exactly what him and I are going to be chatting about. But Dr. Shawna, where can people find you if they're interested in getting in touch with you?
So our website is It's My Time to Heal. ITSMY time, TOHEAL.com. And we're on Instagram and Facebook and in the Scottsdale Air Park in Arizona.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and thanks for tuning in, you
Keep up the
guys.
good work and passion.
Mm.
Love it.